Good morning, everyone. My name's Dan Hahn. I've been clean and sober since July 18th of 2007. I want to welcome everyone to the inaugural Oxford House in Missouri's First State Convention. So the title is Embracing the Future, but we're going to touch a little bit today on both. But before we get started, I want to open in the usual manner with serenity prayer. God, all right. So I wanted to open this convention, and as you can see on the agenda, and I'm drawing the opening ceremony, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here, and it's really important to know the past so we can, move forward in the future. Years ago, well, a decade ago, actually it's been 13 years ago, I used to get phone calls when I lived in Kansas about problems in Missouri. And I didn't understand the lay of the land and how, I just knew that the way I understood things is that if you had an Oxford House, you lived in that Oxford House and you were a part of a chapter and you did things together and help people stay clean and sober and had fun while you were doing it. And I didn't know what outreach workers were. I really didn't know anything. And going back even further, I found about Oxford House in my early recovery in Joplin, Missouri. I met a guy at a meeting hall one night that lived at the Oxford House Moffett. And that house had been there since the 80s, the late 80s. And that's how I found out about Oxford House. And I went over to a house meeting there, and I ended up over in Kansas. And, in those years that I was in Wichita, we would get calls about things going on in Missouri. And Chuck back there, we were working on opposite ends of the state as servants, and all we would hear is issues. And I spent a lot of time, at least, money out of my own pocket, some help from local areas, all the work that the Kansas City chapters did, and tried to help Missouri as much as we could. And then you fast forward, I'd taken many trips up there, and it was just into Kansas City, and it was really it was a negative environment. And I was a member of the World Council back in the early 10s, and did some work here in Springfield with there were two houses here at the time. Did some work with the Men's House, and with an OHI employee helped close the last women's house here. And I learned over time what had gone on. And what had gone on is that Oxford House Incorporated, you would hear people say in those years ago that Oxford House had lost a contract in Missouri. That is not what happened. Oxford House managed a loan fund and provided charters, and the state of Missouri had employees that would go out in open homes. Alex, I need that timer. They would go out in open homes. OHI would provide the charters, and they would use alumni or current members as their field staff. And I remember that the number that I'd gotten, and these, don't quote me on this, but at the time that Missouri started pulling employees out, there was 75 to 78 houses. And we fast forward down the line, and we were down to 28, I believe. And, it showed the importance of outreach and the things that we do to help keep the network viable, and it was very sad. And then I met these folks. And there's a lot of things. I could stand up here all day talking about the miracles of meeting Robin and Nisa. But the day that means the most to me, I was with Jackson Longan and Casey, and I met Rob at a First Watch, and this was long before we had any outreach in there, and we went a few blocks away from this First Watch in North Kansas City, and we looked at this house, and we never ended up getting it, but I remember looking at this house, and they had some little houses on the same block that an outreach worker could potentially live in, and we were talking about what was possible. And I remember getting in the car with Jackson and Casey, and I was in the back seat. And we were leaving that meeting, and I had to tell the gentleman that wanted to rent the house that we couldn't take it. It's like, we don't have any way to support it. We don't have any staff, you know, and it was kind of good that Rob was seeing that, because I was like, you know, there's nothing we can do, you know, and that, if anything, was helping push him, I guess. And there's a lot of other great stories that I'll leave to somebody else, but I know that I was in the back seat of that car, and tears are rolling down my face, and I said, I can't believe that I just looked at that house in Kansas City, Missouri. And since that time, we got some, I'll leave it to other people to tell, but we got a little money moving and started a process. And I will tell you that the relationship that I have, that we have, Oxford House Incorporated has within the Name of Grace, is based on two very distinct purposes and focused objectives. Number one is to fund outreach to expand the network of Oxford houses. And number two is, by hook or by crook, finance it. And nowhere in there does it, and this is the unique thing about it, working in contracts in other states that state and local governments are involved in, there's a lot of, it creates a lot of extra work. And what we've done is created an environment that has a singleness of purpose. And I am overwhelmed to be able to stand in this state that I've always cared about and see the work that you Missouri members have done to get to this point. It's absolutely incredible. I've never seen a small cluster of houses be able to come together with the money to throw an event like this. I don't know. I haven't been around forever, but I doubt a group that small has ever thrown an event this size. I doubt it's ever happened, so we're making history. The ability to find people that'll rent us houses without a Social Security number, tell them that a group of addicts and alcoholics are going to live there and that everything's going to be great, and then you guys to back it up. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And through this convention, we're going to talk about where we're going. We want to give you information to help make your houses stronger. We want to clearly define the role of the outreach workers that are here. We are not the Oxford House Fix Everything. That this is an idea, a sound idea based on a sound system for addicts and alcoholics to help themselves. And that's how we're going to succeed. It's you. It is not us. We are carriers of information. We give you that information and expect you to do the requirements of what the charters offer, what it says on the wall. That's our objective. So I want you guys to really have a good time and be grateful for what you've done. Celebrate it. Meet some people. I want to thank Oklahoma and Nebraska for being here as well. And I want to turn it over to the co-founder of In the Name of Grace, Robin and Nisa Elsie, in whatever order they're going to speak. Thank you.
Good morning. All right, I'm going to try to get through this without too much emotion, but I can't make any promises. My name is Rob Elsie, and I am the president of In the Name of Grace. Full disclosure, guys, I am not a person of long-term recovery. My good friend, brother here, Dan Hahn, gave me the nickname of what I am. I'm a normie. And because of that, I wake up every day, I think about my to-do list, I get my kids up, get my screaming kids ready for school, do what we have to do, and I go on about my day. You guys wake up every morning, and it's a day you have to choose to be clean and sober. I don't know what that's like, guys, but all I can tell you is I have more respect for you than any other people in the world, because you're doing it. You're doing it every day. So congrats and a round of applause for all of you. Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. Forgot we're running the slides, too.
Alex, can we get our...
There we go. I'm happy to be here today and introduce myself, along with my wife, Anissa Elsie, and two of our other co-founders, Doug Ballou and Nancy Whitworth. Guys, stand up real quick. Thank you. Michael Fox, our fifth founder, he wasn't able to be here today. He's expecting his third daughter any day now, and his wife decided he should stay home. We'll agree with that, I guess. We have three additional board members here today. Lindsay Rude Clifford, who is the vice president. Please stand. And two more board members who are directors, Mickey Schroeder and Jeremy Wiley. And let me say something, Jeremy is from our alumni group, and he is our first alumni to be on the Grace Board. In the slide, you'll see our entire board consisting of 15 members. You're up. Well-oiled machine.
There we go. Oh, yay. Hi, everybody. When your why is big enough, you will find your how. Our why began with our daughter. This is Caitlin Elsie. She's our original why. I'll expand on that in a minute. In full disclosure, Caitlin is my stepdaughter. She's Rob's daughter from a previous marriage, but when we got married, Caitlin was 5, and she called me Smommy for stepmommy. And I was Smommy throughout her childhood and into adulthood. In 2011, Caitlin turned to addiction, and we discovered that in her senior year of high school. We discovered that she had a substance use disorder, and we started down the path of counseling and treatment centers and all the things. Our story is not much different than yours. You know the deal. You know where this is headed. Caitlin's drug of choice is meth. Nope, I'm still here. She was in and out of about a dozen treatment centers, and she's lived in 6 Oxford houses in 3 different states. We believe in the model. We do. She's just not ready for it. She's not in an Oxford house today. We believed in the power of the Oxford model because it works. If you work it. You work it. You work it. For Caitlin, it's just a simple case of her not being desperate enough yet. Yesterday in the women's convention, which was amazing, or women's conference, the stories, I mean, I literally had no makeup on at the end of that, wow. But I heard your stories and the desperation that brought you there that day, and she's just not there yet. But we haven't given up on her. I keep saying she's not desperate enough yet. That being said, the times that she did spend in Oxford were the best days that Rob and I had with her when she was sober and her head was clear. We fell in love with Oxford. So she's our original why. Our why expanded. So due to Caitlin's disease, in 2020, Rob and I adopted our grandchildren. This is Mariah and Joey. We are now mommy and daddy in our 50s. To a 3- and 5-year-old. Joey is 3 and Mariah is 5, and they are the light of our lives. They are amazing. We didn't anticipate this being part of our story, and yet it's become the purpose and our mission, and why we believe so strongly in the power of recovery and breaking the cycle. We are going to break the cycle. But wait, there's more. Our why has expanded so big. It's you. You keep us going every day. It's in this room, and it's in every Oxford house across this nation. It's simple. We look at your faces, we hear your stories. We want to do this for you every day. You have a pillow that you get to put your head on in a safe, sober environment, to surround yourselves with the people who are on the same mission as you to live your best life. We love you, and we hope to extend our reach to more of you. Okay, enough of the sappy stuff, okay? I got through that without tears. I can't believe it. Whew. So I have to share a little bit more about how we got started and who gave us some inspiration in the process. So this photo that you see on the screen here was taken at Oxford House International at the World Convention last September. Rob and I were honored to be there with so many of you, and we were awarded on behalf of In the Name of Grace. This is not about Rob and I. It is a tribe that we are honored to be with. But the Tom Fellows Award recognizes contributions made by individuals who have never lived in an Oxford house, normies, but yet have helped the Oxford community grow in their community. So here is a picture of that day. That was pretty cool. Proudest moment of our lives so far. This is Paul Malloy. He's the founder of Oxford House. You heard Marty speak of him yesterday. Throughout the convention in Seattle, we heard from many of Mr. Malloy's co-founders, friends, colleagues, partners in the recovery community as they commemorated his legacy. During that time, there was a word we repeatedly heard, that he was a visionary. Things like this don't happen by accident. That is precisely the word I would use to describe this guy. This was his idea. I'd like to take credit, but it was him. Rob leads his life intentionally with a vision of what more he can do for others. He's that guy. He is relentless in his pursuit of how he can continuously do more. It's kind of exhausting. He leads with that as his big why. It's never about money. It never is. In fact, his motto is, if you do the right thing will eventually happen. When he brought this idea to me in 2016, my initial thought was, how are we going to fit this in? We have full-time jobs. He simply said, how can we not? So from there, we reached out to our good friends, Doug and Nancy, and Michael Fox, and asked if they would take this journey with us. Either we were very compelling, or they were very naive about the work that it would take to get us here. But from there, the five of us embarked on the path to create In the Name of Grace, to keep the Oxford community alive in Kansas City, Missouri. We have been amazed at the success we've realized since that time. So with this being the inaugural Missouri State Conference and the first year after the passing of Oxford House founder, Mr. Paul Malloy, I think it's fitting to go back to the first World Convention in 1999 in Washington, D.C. with its theme, If Not Us, Who? Ironically, that was Rob's original thought, as we learned repeatedly when we would go to look for an Oxford House in Kansas City, Missouri for Caitlin, and we couldn't find one. I mean, there were a couple, but they were full, and there wasn't enough. So we did some research to see what it would take to open some houses. We're like, we got to open some of these houses. Well, in doing that research, we met with Kitty Wright. She was the executive director for FORA, which is the Friends of Recovery Association, and they are the funding entity for Kansas, for the state of Kansas. So we reached out to her, and she said what Missouri needs is outreach. They don't need more houses until they get outreach. We're like, what's that? We didn't know anything. So the houses at that time were just barely hanging on. They existed. They needed outreach to grow. So she invited us to the Fora Gala that was coming up, where we could meet with these two guys, Jackson and Dan, Jackson Longan and Dan Hahn. So we bought a table for the Fora Gala in April of 2016. We invited some of our closest friends and family, got dressed up, and went to this event so we could meet these guys, Dan and Jackson. So we didn't want to be too pushy, so we decided to eat, socialize. We bought some items from the silent auction. We took some pictures, and we were like, okay, it's about time. We probably should go meet these guys. So we went over to Kitty, and we're like, where are they? And she said, they're leaving. They got to get back to Oklahoma. They're leaving tonight. They're at the door. So we ran over there, and we're like, wait. So we said, hey, guys, we're interested in helping out with Oxford outreach in Missouri, here in Kansas City. And they're like, yeah, we've heard that before. Little did they know we were serious. This is you.
Thanks for teeing that up, hon. We literally did run them down. I mean, we literally ran them as they were opening the door to leave. It's kind of a fun story. Just to expand a little, this situation, for some reason, I just felt responsible to fix. I wish I had a photo of us meeting Jackson and Dan that night, but again, we were almost in the parking lot. Those are the only 2 pictures that we have from the evening. And yeah, I look a little different. I was about 75 pounds heavier, but that's a whole different story for a different time. It's really amazing to see all of you guys at this inaugural event. There are people from all over the state. We'll assume that most of you don't know who we are. So now that you've heard a little bit about our why and the background, it's important that we help you understand who In the Name of Grace is and what we do. Dan, thank you for the intro. That helped a little bit. We are In the Name of Grace. And you might think that Grace is our daughter's name, but it's not. Her name is Caitlin. Grace is actually an acronym, and it stands for Giving Recovering Addicts a Chance to Evolve. Our tagline takes it even a little further, and it gives them a chance to evolve from dependence to whatever their drug of choice may be, their addiction, to independence, and it does it through safe, sober living. Oxford Houses. I think the simplest explanation for you all to understand our relationship with Oxford is that Grace provides private funds to cover the salary and expenses related to outreach workers in the state of Missouri. We're unique in that we are the only state that I know of that has this arrangement with OHI, where most states rely on grants and public funding to cover outreach expenses. Unfortunately, in 2010, budget cuts forced Missouri to reassign the employees that they had acting as outreach staff, and the termination of that contract. That's a direct quote from Deborah Walker in 2015 from the Missouri Department of Health. When the funds were pulled, there was a self-proclaimed outreach worker. Some of you have been around here a while may know this name. His name was Howard Robinson. I'd like to say that that was a good thing, but unfortunately, Howard was a little bit of a lamb in a wolf in lamb's clothing. He referred to himself, I think, as the Housing Services Chairman. He was a bad seed who came in and took over the houses when he saw an opportunity. They were still called Oxford Houses. They still had charters hanging on the wall, but they didn't follow the model. Mr. Robinson actually controlled all the funds. You can kind of imagine where that was going and what that did. This is a good article in the pitch. You should read it if you haven't already. There's interesting thoughts in it. Mr. Malloy is quoted in it, but it doesn't necessarily paint a great picture of what Oxford looked like in Missouri at that time. Again, the state funds were pulled, leaving the existing houses to fend for themselves without any outreach or any help from Oxford. The pitch, and as you guys now kind of understand, the neighboring states wanted to help, but because they were funded from each state they're in, they really didn't have the ability, flexibility to go across the state line. It just wasn't really financially feasible. The pitch article in 2015, after that, things did not get better for a couple more years. It was a true God thing that our foundation formed in 2016, and we were able to enter into the contract to take over and help funding for outreach. Around the time, Dan Hahn was promoted to take over the state of Missouri and recruited Lance, Big Papa, as the outreach worker. That's when real magic started, guys. We embarked on the journey to establish the name of In the Grace. There was 10 existing houses in the metro area, KC metro area. When Lance was hired, he had a tall task. He was instantly tasked to close 4 very sick houses and relocate one house, which is the Shoto house, and embarked on opening new houses. I'd like to add, in December of just this last year, 2022, we expanded our contract and amended it to take on outreach for the entire state of Missouri. So hang on, folks. It's getting ready to take off. Several key people came together to take Missouri back. There are so many people who have been instrumental in getting us where we are today, here in this room. We're certain to leave some people out, and for that I apologize. However, we do want to mention a few of the key pioneers to help tell this story. Jackson Longan, who's not here today, believed in us from the very beginning. He came to one of our initial think tanks along with Casey Burley. and helped us kind of just introduce some hopeful board members to what we wanted to do. Dan Hahn was promoted and helped take over leadership in Kansas City, Missouri. Dan and I think, instantly became brothers of different mothers and bonded very quickly. And it wasn't just because we're both Chiefs fans. How about those Chiefs, though? We got to plug it, right? Sorry for those of you from other parts of the state. Lance Whitney was hired as the outreach worker. There's a little more to that story, but we'll tell that at a different time. We relocated the Shoto House. Nick Dykes stepped up and started down the leadership path with Oxford and was the first Chapter 9 president in a long time. He's not going to stand up. He's looking down so I don't call too much attention to him. He's one of those unsung heroes. They converted a sober living house that a gentleman owned that was not an Oxford house into an Oxford house. It's now the Platt Woods house. There was a gentleman living there that had moved into that house because he did not want to be in an Oxford house necessarily. His name is Brent Smollinger. Yeah. He's the sole resident that remained in that house. Everybody else vacated, and Brent stuck around to see what it was all about. Brent quickly started down the leadership path, too. Has taken some pretty big roles, and he actually is part of the World Council now. The Wayne House opened up, one of the very first houses Lance opened, and a young man, Jeremy Wiley, who's on our board, moved from the Swope House to help open the Wayne House, and he also started down the leadership path. I believe he was the second Chapter 9 president following in his friend's footsteps. Yeah, pretty amazing. Missouri State I'll slow down. The Missouri State Association was revived in January of 2020 when some folks came together and had a leadership summit that month. I believe Mikey Gustafson, Dan Hahn, Lance Whitney, along with 7 reps from Kansas City and 2 reps from St. Louis. Without going into every detail of each house that opened between 2017 and 2020, Lance opened 13 new houses. One of these houses, the Penguin Park House, had 19 beds, so we kind of fudged a little bit, and in the name of grace, we considered that to be 2 houses, and it helped us meet a goal we had set of 20 houses by 2020. A little more to that, it's kind of funny, is that it was kind of a marketing idea we put up on our website, and we pushed, because we do this out of private funding, guys, so we have to make things look really good, because we're trying to convince people to give us money for something they don't really understand. But Dan and Jackson kind of stepped in and said, wow, 20 by 2020, that's not really doable in this market. We don't have the strength, we don't have the sobriety, that's a lot of growth. Well, somehow between they underestimated the power of Big Papa, Lance builds leaders for a living, guys. Then this happened. Members of the Kansas City, Missouri chapters and the St. Louis chapters began with a vision of starting the Missouri State Association. When I say this happened, I mean this happened. Nick, Mikey, Curtis Washington from St. Louis, some of the very first members that came together to form the Missouri State Association almost 4 years ago, and this was a vision they had at that time. Currently today, we have 4 chapters that have joined Missouri State Association. The association meetings went from having 3 or 4 or 5 members to having an average of 15 to 30 members every meeting. That's leadership. That's growth. Speaking of leadership, we do have to thank a lot of people. This is just one. Nick, he's been with us since the very beginning. He's hanging his head, shaking it. Love that picture of him. Nick doesn't do it for the money. He clearly doesn't do it for the glory. He's not about accolades. He's a grateful man in recovery who believes in giving back. I'll take over. I can't say Nick's name without
I tried to take all the hard slides because he does this. He does this. My sappy husband. It's true, though, Nick. You know, your story is really amazing. All of your stories are amazing, but Nick stuck it out. I mean, he was like, he could have just left, and when Dan came in and said, we need to do something here, he was living in a house that had cockroaches and all the things. It was just not, there was no manual, no Oxford manual, but it was called an Oxford house. And he's like, all right, I'll stick around. And thank God he did. Seriously. Couldn't have done it without you. And Jess, you're just right there with him. You're amazing. Okay, so next. All righty, did it go? Yep. It did. Okay, so what's next? We're gonna wrap it up here, sorry, got a minute left. So our plan is to just continue to grow this thing, all right? So we've taken on the state of Missouri, check. We're going to expand outreach. We're going to deepen our relationship with OHI. We have a lot of really great relationships, and we'll continue to expand on that. Jonathan's here. He helps us with with grants, and it's just amazing the partnership we have formed. Our goal is to continue to add at least 4 houses a year, probably more, but we'll start with that because we're told, yes, thank you, there we go, more. At first it's slow down, now it's like more. We're good with that. We love more. We're going to focus on private and foundation grant applications. We want to enhance our diversity and inclusion. Residents, board members, investors, diversity, inclusion, it's what we are, it's who we are. We have to come together and have that unity. And bottom line, we want to save more lives. So where does the money come from? We don't have state funding, as you know. Still working on that. So we're tasked with finding the money to fund this, and we didn't know where it was going to come from. We just kind of took a leap of faith one day and said, let's just figure it. Let's just do this. We'll figure it out. Through private donations and a couple of grants we were able to apply for and receive, but we rely most heavily on fundraisers. These are the events that you see up on the screen here that we've held so far. So we started with the Grace Race in 2018 and 2019. Probably we'll do another one day, but those are the 2 years we did it. Then we switched gears in 2020 when the world shut down and we had to do things remotely, and we had Grace Speaks, where we had virtual webcasts with some amazing speakers. We had 3 of those. And then we had a yard sale in 2021, Goodies for Grace. And what's turned out to be our marquee event is Your Royal Grace. And that is at the American Royal, the world's biggest barbecue competition in Kansas City. And that's last year we had over 800 people there. If you were at that, why don't you raise your hand? Yeah. Next year, I want to see a lot more hands. But thank you for being there. I would say that it's pretty epic. Would you guys say it was pretty epic? Yeah. Pretty cool. We bring in the M80s band that they for 5 years in a row, they've been voted #1 cover band for the 80s music, and they love us, and they're going to come back again next year. So we kind of do a fun 80s theme, and so mark your calendars. That was last year. Was that so much fun? So this year, this is going to be our primary fundraiser again. We need volunteers. We'll be getting out in front of this. And we plan this year, guys, to have a mocktail bar. Fun. And also, on the Saturday following this year, so the big party is on Friday. That's our big fundraiser night. But on Saturday, we're going to throw a party for you guys. Okay? You're all invited. And we're going to serve you barbecue and a fun night in a safe, sober environment. All right. And I'm going to let Rob close us out.
First off, thank you for giving us this time. Thank you for being here. The theme says it. Embrace the future. Look around, guys. Look next to you, look left, look right, look in front of you, look behind. You newbies here, absorb it. You are the future. You got here because you're doing it. Let's grow this thing, man. Let's do it. We love you.